invited Jordan Beane and Lori Zapf 2 months ago. Jordan had a legitimate scheduling conflict, and he told me 2 months ago right away he couldn't do it. Lori's office waited till this afternoon to call me and tell me that she was bailing, and I consider it a bail on the community. So we are tonight looking for a new council to represent us. We just want to be heard. You know, one of the things, and I said it to all of the folks before us now, that really we expect a district council person to be at our most important community planning group meetings, because that's our official voice to the city. And I couldn't imagine running for the office, being elected, and not, you know, trying to make these meetings, because that's the ear to the ground, find out what my constituents would want. Okay. Something about the email list. If you haven't signed up on the email list, you know where you can find it. It's on the front page of Raise the Balloon. We're updating the Bay Park Boardwalk site so that once the marina plan is out of CEQA, we'll have a 45-day public review period. Not much time. So we're trying to work the site up to where the major issues show and that you can weigh in on those issues. Okay, keep it at my knees. Okay, so I'm gonna first let Carrie from our Claremont Town Councils just introduce what the Town Council does.
Hello, it is loud. My name's Carrie Munson. I'm on the Claremont Town Council, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and let you know what we do. We do forums like this, similar to what we're doing tonight. We have meetings where we've talked about District 2, District 6, people running for the council. We've had the county supervisor, District 4. We've had the sheriff's department, so we have a lot of those type of things. We also bring up issues that affect Claremont, like the Pure Water Project, which is a 4-foot pipe going up through Claremont, a homeless building that's being developed in Claremont, and we also run the garden tour. We raised $20,000 this year on our garden tour, and 100% of that money goes back to Claremont. Things like Friends of Tecolote Canyon, Claremont Days, beautification of Claremont. We meet on the first Thursday of every month at Claremont High School at 6:30 in the cafeteria. You can look us up on Facebook, Claremont Town Council. You can get on our newsletter and come to our meetings. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Restrooms are right out this door and to the right. And then Tom, he's going to explain timing.
So each of the candidates will get 3 minutes to talk about the question that they're asked. I'll be the timekeeper. When you see the green, that's good. After 2.5 minutes, I'll put it to yellow. After 3, it'll be red. And I appreciate at the red, you do stop. Okay? And what we'll do is the first question, maybe we'll start with Dr. Jen, and then you can just move the microphone along. The next question will be to Daniel, and go back this way. How does that sound?
And we're going to try to save enough time in the end for each of you to make a candidate statement. For introductions, we have a missing Jordan Beane, legitimately. Dr. Jen Campbell. Randy, if you come in, please take a seat. Bryan Pease, Kevin Melton, and Daniel S.
That's a bad omen.
Smiechoiwski. Did I get it right, Daniel?
Well, it's still a bad omen, but I'll take it.
Okay. All right. As you know, California's housing crisis keeps worsening. So, for our discussion tonight, we want to really drill down to some specific issues that we have as a community. As you know, the state, the city, the county are all putting pressure on us to take on a really large number of new housing units. So, city planners want to do a massive rezone to allow 9,000 to 12,000 new living units between Balboa Avenue and Friars Road, which is a little over a 3-mile distance. And the first question is regarding our 30-foot height limit here in Claremont and our 45 height limit in Linda Vista. Protecting that was really the catalyst of this community, and you see some of the red shirts. So since 2014, we have been trying to definitely protect and get guarantees on protection of that height limit. But the city, although the planning department has agreed to maintain the 30-foot height limit in Claremont, they have not agreed to respect the 45-foot height limit in the Linda Vista portion of the Marina Plan. And just for reference, you might be able to see that. You've probably seen the map before. And Tom, let's point right to the bottom. And if the audience can see it, it's hard to see, but most of the new living units are going to be in that lower portion of the plan, which is mostly in the Linda Vista plan area. So the question is, will you, we won't have a guarantee until you folks vote. So whoever is elected to the District 2 seat will be voting, but not until 2020. And that's because we are undergoing a community plan update. And we don't estimate that it'll be complete until 2020. And as you know, you're the last rung in the planning process. So we'll start with Dr. Jen. Will you protect the height limits? And if you won't, can you explain why?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hi. Yes, I will protect the 30-foot limit. And as far as Linda Vista goes, my understanding is that there's only 2 exceptions to the 30-foot height limit in the Linda Vista area. Mr. Wayne is here, who's on the planning board for Linda Vista. I think there's 2 buildings that have an exemption, so they're 45 feet. So it's not written in stone that they can have 45 feet. They have to get exemptions for that. So yes, I absolutely think that we need to protect the character of the neighborhood. We need to be able to protect our views. I have a 10-point plan, at least 10 points, that the city can do to help increase our housing stock so that people who aren't millionaires can find housing. And if you'd like, well, I guess I have 3 minutes, huh? So I can talk a little bit about some of them. Did you know we have something called in lieu of fees? And what that means is that the developers can build a building without including low-income housing so long as they pay an in lieu of fee to the city. It's really cheap. It's like $1.59 a square foot. So it's very easy for them to get out of providing that housing that we need on those lower income rungs by paying the in lieu of fee. We could get rid of it, or we could raise the price of it so much that it doesn't pay them to pay it instead of making the units that we need. We can also make a law now to mandate that they have to build so many units of lower income. The mayor has proposed 10%. Under state law, we could go up to 15%. So that's another thing we could do. We could streamline the permitting process. It's very hard for developers. They have to get so many permits, it takes so much time, there's all these calendars and they have to meet deadlines. We need to get that more efficient. We need to streamline the process for them. I know one developer told me it took him 10 years to get the permits he needed before he could turn the first shovel of dirt over. That's ridiculous. So we need to make it more efficient. We need to incentivize building middle-class housing. We need to rethink allowing smaller units. Previously, we wouldn't even allow anything smaller than a certain amount of square feet. And they would have to pay the same fees, the developers, whether it was that small square footage or large square footage. So that's kind of silly. We need to adjust that. We have to plan ahead on our housing offerings near transit centers. We have to be very careful so that we don't have too much density in our neighborhoods. And I'm going to stop there because I'm just about out of time. Thank you.
Hey folks, Bryan Pease. Turn my microphone off there. So I'm an environmental attorney. I live in Ocean Beach, and for the past 14 years I've lived and worked in San Diego solely for the public interest. My entire law practice is focused on fighting for things like government transparency and accountability, holding corporations accountable, protecting consumers, protecting the environment, protecting freedom of speech and assembly. And I go up on a daily basis, I go up against the same corporate special interests that are constantly trying to get around things like the height limit, trying to extract value from our communities for their own profit and not providing benefit back. So we need to start looking at things like eliminating the height limit and eliminating parking requirements and higher density as what it is, which is a subsidy. When we are actually, if we give these things to developers, if we lighten regulations and allow developers to not have to abide by these regulations, that is in fact a subsidy to them. We are taking something from the public good, something of value to our community, and we're giving it to these developers for profit so that they can profit from it. And we need to look at what is it that we are getting back. Now let me state unequivocally that I am in favor of protecting that height limit. It's very important, particularly in the view corridor that we have in this lot that's owned by the Manchester Jerome conglomerate, and they want to just build up, build. And they want to go up to what? They're talking about 120 feet now, and it's all luxury condos. This isn't for affordable housing. This isn't for anything of value. It's solely for profit, and it's going to create a traffic nightmare. It's going to create a parking nightmare. So I will stand with you against that. When I hear things like, let's incentivize middle income housing, that's a red flag. That is dangerous. That's something that's being actually discussed right now at the Smart Growth and Land Use Committee at the City Council. And Lori Zapf sits on that committee. Lori Zapf is backed by developers. That's the biggest, by far, contributor to her campaign is developers, and on top of that's her personal campaign. Then you've got the super PAC that is supporting Councilmember Zapf, and that is backed by the Building Industry Association. So she's going to go along with whatever the developers want, and the mayor right now is trying to fast track this proposal, and they're couching it in terms of we're incentivizing middle income, but what they're really doing is they're taking density bonus, which was something that was to provide for low-income affordable housing. They're saying, let's just make it so the developers can build so-called middle-income housing. It's really just building more luxury condos for more profit, and then they get out of the same parking requirements and density requirements. So it's a subsidy to developers, and we have to stop that. Jordan's not here tonight because he is at the YIMBY Democratic Club having a fundraiser for him. I did not seek that endorsement. Does red mean stop, or I have a certain amount of time? Okay, I'll continue with that line.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Melton. My answer is going to be short because the question wasn't long. It's yes, I will support the height limits that are imposed. I agree with Dr. Jin on fast tracking some things downtown to get things built. I have not been quiet about not putting affordable housing on the coast. I don't think affordable housing belongs on the coast. I feel that people in these areas have worked very hard to live in their communities. They want their communities to stay a certain way. And San Diego has plenty of land. Okay? They don't have to stuff it all right here where you live and bring everyone into your neighborhoods for houses that you've worked hard to live in, gain equity. Some of it's going to be your retirement. And you start putting in a lot of affordable housing, the neighborhoods change, the value of the housing changes, and I am not for all of that. I believe, I happen to be from a place, a little bit wealthier neighborhood where I grew up. I understand what it does when neighborhoods change. I go home now. Neighborhood hasn't changed a whole lot since I was a kid. bigger homes and a few other things like that. But it still has the quaint, quiet atmosphere of the neighborhood. People still know each other, like-minded, get things done in the community because they are like-minded. That may sound a little elitist. I don't mean it to sound that way. All I'm saying is people worked hard to live along this coast, and you can't keep sticking everything along the coast. If you notice when you're watching the news, any kind of flyers that go out about San Diego, it's always the corridor down the coast. So what happens? Everyone wants to live along the coast. I was telling someone earlier, when I finished school, I had to get a job, okay? I went and got it. I had to go back to LA for a job because the jobs here weren't paying enough money. My first house I bought was not in Manhattan Beach. It was not, well, it could have been back then, but because it was a lot cheaper to live there. But you have to work your way up to certain areas. What's your incentive? I mean, that's what I was taught as a child. You got to have incentives to keep going and going forward. But if I give it all to you now, and this is exact quotes from my father, and I can give it all to you if I want to, what do you have to look forward to? What do you have to work for? So I like the neighborhood the way it is. I want it to stay. It can use quite a bit of some improvements, your roads, different things like that. But as far as this more density in the housing, it's dense enough. Some is okay, but not as much as they're trying to put in. Go to kevinmelton.net. I'm much more eloquent on TV. Go to the media page and watch these interviews that I've done about this. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, James Smiechoiwski, that's my name. Call me Danny. I'm the only candidate on this stage with a voting record on the Claremont Community Planning Group. I voted on these issues, going back 20 years. I'm the only candidate in 1972 that voted for the 30-foot height limitation. I go back over 51 years here. My father built the big, huge house on Tokelan Court, which today is worth probably $2 million. He owned 5 houses in Claremont. He earned $100 a week at Convair, Plant 19. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't come here to pander for your vote. I didn't come here to tell you what you want to hear. But in all likelihood, we may have to go higher than the height limitation. Not much higher, but obviously we have a horrible, horrible crisis with housing locally. And keep in mind the big picture. There's a bigger picture here. There are 9 members on that city council, 9. We are only 1 vote out of 9. I work in real estate, I'm a landlord. And I have taken the initiative to rent to low income, to rent to veterans. And I believe my political philosophy is offer incentives, not prohibition. We don't need more prohibitions. I tend to look at things very, very carefully. Very carefully, and I look at the big picture when I make a decision. And I agree with Jen on one point that we need to cut the red tape with the developers. We need to streamline the amount of fees that people pay for a granny flat. My time is up. Thank you.
All right, so for Kevin, we're gonna have a real long question this day.
I can't remember that long.
So, we've asked the city to provide us specific arena numbers, the regional needs assessment numbers, because they have been using arbitrary numbers with us since this planning process began back in 2014. When we get those numbers, we know, like every other community in the 52 plan areas in the jurisdiction that makes up the city of San Diego, we are going to have to take on more housing. We are concerned about what type of housing. We know that our real estate prices have gone through the roof again. It's getting very close to $1 million base price for a home in Bay Park. What we hear from community members is, if we're taking on this housing, we want to make sure it's the housing that police and teachers and the guy that's going to put out the fire in my house can afford. And what that means is that's a category of affordable housing. It's one notch under market rate. And in Linda Vista, the subcommittee there is up against two very large development proposals on the board. So, I'm going to grab that. The two largest parcels are roughly 20 acres apiece. And I'll show the audience first. So it's those two parcels there. Hey guys, those two parcels there. The proposals that we've been given so far from the landowners are for luxury apartment rentals with ocean views. We know that they will be above market rents. And we don't see that as a benefit to the community. So we want to see a very certain category of workforce housing produced there. We have a chance, if we have help from our district council members, to get the appropriate type of housing put in place. So the question is, how do you plan on helping this community? What specifically will you do to help us get the appropriate type of housing in place? And I think we want to start this time with maybe jump over to Bryan, to Bryan. Is that what you're thinking? Okay.
Yeah, so there are very specific things that we can do in order to create the kind of housing that we need in order to prevent displacement. And that's the key, right? We need to stop people from being driven out of the district, driven out of the city. And the reason that housing prices keep going up is because developers are allowed to keep getting away with whatever they want, essentially. The city council is not standing up to the developers. And they don't have, the city council right now is kind of toothless because there's nobody on the city council with the land use expertise and the background of somebody like myself as an environmental attorney, somebody who has gone up against developers, corporations, special interests, knows about the lobbying loopholes and the dirty tricks and how the developers will always extract what they want and they will present it in complex staff reports through the mayor's office. The mayor's office will tell the city council, here's a bunch of documents, here's why we need to do this. And then they scream about how they just need to build, and that's gonna somehow drive down housing costs. It's not gonna drive down housing costs. The way that we create affordable housing and the way that we make it so that people can actually afford to live here is we have to plan with those RENA numbers, and they have to be actual numbers, and we have to plan for all levels of income, and we have to require developers to build affordable housing. So we could do this by passing an ordinance. In the city of San Diego, there are plenty of developments going up all the time, and they're not being required to build affordable housing. There was a state court decision called the Palmer decision several years ago, which made the city of San Diego think that they could not require affordable housing to be included in all new developments. unless it was receiving federal funds or was some other independent reason. There's been a legislative fix to this at the state level, so the city needs to act quickly, but it's not, because the city council is logjammed right now. Frankly, we do need that 6th supermajority vote with this council seat. Lori Zapf is going to block any attempt to pass such an ordinance because it would hold the developers accountable. So we need this 6th seat so that we can get past any mayoral vetoes and actually hold developers accountable. And we can pass an ordinance and we can require that all new developments have a minimum of, I would say, at least 25% affordable housing, low income and very low income. The numbers that are being floated around now and what are required for certain types of developments is 10%. That's too low. It needs to go higher. We see developments going up all the time. So there's no shortage of building. But what there is there's a shortage of political will to actually hold the developers accountable and actually require them to build affordable housing. And then we need basic tenant protection. We need to stop people from being displaced for things like Airbnb and being forced out of where they're living. And I see my time is up, so maybe the next question will segue into this. Are we going this way here? Who's next?
Brian.
I'm Brian.
Okay.
It's Kevin.
The way to sign is.
Okay. This is not a tough answer for me, and I get a lot of flack about it. I just don't. I'm adamant about not putting affordable housing on the coast through this 5 corridor. I just have to work on life experiences. I used to commute 50 miles to work because I couldn't afford to buy a house near where I worked in the beautiful place in the backside of Hollywood Hills. So I used to commute from San Pedro. I got a nice place out there all the way to Hollywood Hills every day, 3 years, until I could get closer. Okay? My brother drove from Moreno Valley all the way to El Segundo every day for 10 years because he moved out there with his family, bought a nice house, same house he could not afford to buy in Torrance, California. I just don't have a whole lot of sympathy, and I'm sorry if I'm offending people, I really am, because I know that it takes hard work, okay? I left San Pedro, went to Manhattan Beach, okay? It took me years, worked, built it up, I moved. I didn't say build me a house here so I can live here and don't want to drive that far and I like to look at the bay every day and all the rest. And most of you agree with me. I see a lot of seniors here. I am a senior. And I just have a problem with it. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I have a problem with it. You can go out 15, 17 miles. There's lots of land out there. They just had a project in the news they talked about in Rancho Penasquitos. They're talking about affordable housing and some things going. They're not getting much flack for that. The flack comes when you try to take it and put it in this corridor where you have the highest priced real estate in San Diego. Solana Beach is still fighting all this. You know, I mean, and I'll give you an example. Like I tell you, my folks live up in Palos Verdes. They were pushing Palos Verdes. Do you know what they did? And this is how idiotic and how creative people can do. The 4 golf courses, they built 20 units of small apartment type condos, and they only rent them to people who work on the golf course to get by the ordinances. I mean, these things can be done. I mean, it just, everyone go to work. When the time comes, you move, you gain equity in your homes, you move again, and you get where you need to be. And that's all I have to say. I'm just so tired. I'm just giving you my true feelings. I'm tired of all this. You gotta move. When you're done, when you finally get to where you need to be, if this is where you want to be here. Thank you.
I'm not sure I know what affordable means in terms of income, except from what I'm reading on your graph and in the newspaper and on television. Affordable to me might not be affordable to you or affordable to your neighbor, but I will tell you one thing. a developer came to my planning group with a proposal to build 48 to 52 luxury properties, luxury by over $1 million in Claremont. The vote was 15-1. I was the lone vote against it. One person, the only one. I voted against it because I felt that we needed to put housing. I felt, in my mind, affordable would have been $550,000 or $500,000, but not over $1 million. We have to draw the line somewhere, and there's always a big picture, ladies and gentlemen. I disagree with my colleague here on the right on the issue of affordable housing in Claremont. I believe that in our community, we do need housing where people can afford to live here, people that earn a reasonable amount of money, I suppose. By reasonable, I can't put my finger on it. I just don't know. And I'm the kind of guy, I look at the big picture. I'm very honest. I analyze everything. And I don't make rash decisions. I don't jump into things quickly and just... because things are complicated out there. And there are 9 people that vote on the city council. We're not the only ones that vote. We have to get along with everyone on the council and work together. And I'm not a partisan politician. I'm a middle, right down the middle. And the only candidate running out of everyone, right down the middle. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, as a Democrat my entire life, the local party rated me unqualified because I vote with, God forbid, Republican, but they're good people, they're my neighbors. I live with them. That's who I am. I don't vote according to a political party. I never will. I'll vote according to you and what you desire. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't say it. Thank you.
Is this on? Yes. Okay. I think we need to have affordable housing as well as middle-class housing, as well as mixed housing. We all need to get to know each other at various economic levels, and we need to do this throughout the city, not just here, everywhere, every neighborhood. Actually, the Planning Commission has identified 6 neighborhoods that it thinks could have much more density, and ours is not one of them. Okay, the only one in our district that is one is PB. Bay Park, Bay Home, no. So, in terms of having the developers have to make a certain percent, I talked about 10 to 15% is okay in state law. The city can now mandate that up to 15% has to be affordable housing. The question is, put yourself in the shoes of the developer. I always like to look at things from everybody else's moccasins. Okay, so I, as a person who grew up poor, I grew up poor. My dad was a machinist, my mom was a housewife, we didn't have anything. Education is what really saved me. Education's the key. So if people want to live here who may not have a lot of income, that doesn't mean they're not good people. They're excellent people. They want to work hard, study hard, and get ahead. So the city could mandate up to 15%. I've been told by the head of the San Diego Housing Federation that builds housing for low-income people that after 10 to 15% doesn't pencil out for the developer. In other words, they cannot make a profit if they have to build too much of the low-cost housing. Now, there's a lot of funding available from the government. And if we can increase that, state, county, federal, to subsidize, then maybe we could pencil out more than 15%. But in the meantime, I think it's a good idea that we all have a mix and a diverse of people in our lives and in our neighborhoods and in our communities, and that we all learn to work together with each other. So I think it's a good idea, and we need to make sure there's middle-class housing. You know, we have 125% enough housing for rich people. If you're a millionaire, you got 125% of the housing you need if you're looking to buy a house. But if you're middle class or poorer, it's only 50% out there compared to the 100% that's needed. So we need to have more lower income and middle class housing. And we need to do it. And I had several steps as to what the city could do to help that. And one is to look at the short-term vacation rental problem. There's a problem where people are renting out whole homes, whole apartments, or whole condos that don't live there permanently. Every 3 nights, every week, every couple weeks. And people who live here and work here can't find a house to rent or an apartment to rent. So San Francisco had the same problem, and I have to stop now, so I'll go into it later. But thank you. They solved it, and we can too.
Okay, we're going to start with you, Kevin. So, we've had enough pressure put on us to know that we're going to have to take on more housing, whether we like it or not, right? Most of us feel that 9,000 to 12,000 new living units in this little over 3 mile distance is egregious. And we also, you know, it gets down to just feeling overcrowded. We know that the developers, particularly the ones that have proposed to go up to the maximum height limits in Linda Vista to 108 feet, we know that they are going to use parking requirements as part of their density bonus package. So there's not going to be enough parking, we understand that. We've also spoken with Sandag and Caltrans and all of MTS, all of the government agencies that really are responsible for the mobility around these projects. And they all finger point. We need some real help. We can't even imagine how they're going to get in the one project on Jerome's site. Their first proposal was 1,700 units. We know it's now going to be, you know, quite a bit more. And we can't even fathom what our roadways will be in the morning. How are these folks going to get onto Interstate 5 in the morning to go to work? And we know that they are not going to be trolley riders. If you put in luxury housing in here, luxury condos with an ocean view, it's going to be well, it won't be my children, but it will be somebody's, and they're, you know, the type of cars I can see them. Maseratis. So they're going to drive to work. That's what we see. And we don't have any real work centers here. We don't fit the traditional model of transit-oriented development. It's a great idea, it doesn't fit, particularly on Claremont Drive, where we are going to have a trolley built under the freeway. Literally built in, and we're talking about not just, and on the south end here, which the question will be on, the idea is that people will drive, at least Sandag's idea is that people will drive and park and take the trolley. So let's say some do. So we, you know, in real human terms now, we're looking at a real human issue. We have projects that were built in Kearney Villa with the least amount of parking the developers could get away with, and there are parking wars going on. You have families out on the curbside at 4 in the afternoon trying to hold a spot for their family members. And please, if you haven't seen that, just Google it. It'll blow your mind. The city doesn't care whether we have enough parking. We understand that because they want to force us to use transit. So, the question is, how are you going to help this community deal with the consequences of overcrowding? And that being specifically traffic congestion, the burden it's going to place on a deteriorating and failing infrastructure, and the lack of public services. We know from our Linda Vista planning group meetings that there's not enough police to do everything that the community wants. So, how are you going to help us?
Number one, I'm not beholden to the developers. I was the endorsed Republican candidate last time when I ran for office. Had all the endorsements of all the developers and everything else, and I didn't listen to them then, and I don't listen to them now. I think it's very important that they bear the burden of making sure that these roads are widened to some degree, and the transport falls upon them. If they're going to bring in more residents, they need to figure out how we're going to accommodate that. As far as these structures, I mean, I don't know the entire plan of these condos in, but I lived downtown before I moved back to Point Loma. I lived in Point Loma for quite a few years. Moved downtown, lived downtown for 4.5 years, and just moved back to Point Loma in the last 1.5 years. We had a situation where, depending on the size of the condo, determines how many parking spaces each person got. I had a 600 square foot condo, I got 1 parking space. Anything over 800 square feet, you got 2 parking spots. The people who did not, well, if you had more than 1 car and you only had 1 parking space, you were on your own. I knew people who would walk a half a mile to where they could park, and that's just what happened. Or they'd have to pay, additional monthly fees in other lots around the corner, around the area, which I think that's what they need to do also. They need to offer alternative parking in areas where they can pay an extra fee for that. As far as riding the trolley, actually I rode it all the time. They're building a new trolley line, which you said is absolutely correct. They're going to go ahead and it's going to cause more congestion because they're taking up more room. It's already a nightmare, as you know, getting down Balboa to the freeway or going in the direction. Even when they've cut it down to 1 lane down here on Marina now, it's a nightmare. So these are things that have to be worked on, and they have to be discussed in council. But I'd like the developers to bear the burden of it. And the way we also change these things is we have to start changing people. San Diego, if you look, you've been looking at the same people making the same plans for I don't know how many years. And what happens? When one leaves this position, they bring in another person that you know in this position and put in that position. These are all like-minded thinkers. Okay? They don't know how to create anything. Every time they need more money for something, what do? They look for a tax to raise to fix something. I create money, okay? And that's the #1 thing I'm going to do when I get on the council. I'm going to start creating money. When they say we don't have money to do this and we don't have money to do that, I will get the money because I'm not going to go to the people and say, hey, why don't you give me the money? I'm going to go find the money elsewhere. So that's what I can say about that. That we've got to put the burden on the developers. And hopefully everything will, we need people who are willing to go up against them and force them to do these things. Thank you.
The future, we have a future. Everyone will need shelter, but not everyone will need a car. And the way I look at it, we're going to have measures in the future, maybe 10, 20, 30 years from today, where we have car-free zones. We have no cars allowed. We're going to have to get people, almost have to force people, but not physically, or we're going to have to impose upon them, and they're going to have to learn to live without a car. I don't have a car by choice. I don't own a car. I'm going to take the 105 bus on Melton home after the meeting. Probably the only candidate up here from Missouri. How many of you know that old expression? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 2 people. Oh, unbelievable. Anyway, it's an old expression. The show me state. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem we have is not the shelter, not the housing, not the density. It's the automobile, it's the car. Detroit has already lamented the golden age of the automobile is gone. Now, the future is going to be without cars. We can't build any more roads. Where are we going to build them? And even if we did, we're going to just cause more heartache, more problems. So, looking ahead, I envision this whole Marina area, maybe not the entire stretch, but at least the high-density areas are going to have to be car-free. They're already talking about it downtown, to make downtown car-free. Everyone wants to live here, but that's what we're up against. Reality. It's reality, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you.
How to deal with the overcrowding? That was the question, right? Let us make sure it doesn't happen in the first place.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We have withstood the city telling us what to do, and that this plan is already in place too many times. It is time for the city to take into account the neighborhoods, the people in the neighborhoods, and our feelings, and what we think. There's a lot of intelligent, well-educated people here, and you all have ideas about what we could do to make the new trolley areas beautiful, sustainable, and enhance our quality of life, not make it worse. In terms of infrastructure, such as how are you going to get somewhere? Yeah, let's make sure that these plans are in place prior to them building all this housing. We have to make sure the infrastructure is there, and I'm talking everything. Sewer, water, roads, everything. So this is what we have to do. We have to stand up, we have to look at every detail, we have to be on guard, we have to make sure that it's done right. Otherwise, they're just gonna roll over us. You know, with the red balloon thing, what happened in the beginning is the developers said, oh, those people over in Claremont area, they're asleep. We can get away with building high-rises with water views. Guess what? The red balloon came into existence. We are not asleep. And we are sick and tired of being dictated to by the city when they don't understand our neighborhood, our needs, and what we would like to see our neighborhood become. So we need to make sure we have a representative who stands up for us and stands strong and stands tall. I have a spine of steel. I came here from Pittsburgh. Many years ago. But I brought that spine of steel with me, and I'm telling you, they cannot sway me. I'm going to stand up for what we need and for our quality of life. We do not want to be Los Angeles. We do not want to be Manhattan. We want to be Bay Park, Bay Ho, the beach communities. We want to enjoy the beauty of nature. And we want to keep the Claremont breeze flowing. We don't want to block it off with high buildings. We have to keep our environment safe and healthy. And so that's what I think is we just have to fight, we have to be vigilant, and I'm there to do it for you.
So the thing that we need to remember is developers are, well, we know this, developers are in it for money, they want to build, and they're going to keep on building. And we need to get back to what I stated in response to the first question, which is that when we let developers out of various regulations, it is in fact a subsidy, it is a handout to these developers, to these corporations. So they are going to extract whatever they can from the community. And when they say it doesn't pencil out to build more than 15% affordable housing in a development, first of all, they're lying. How do you know developers are lying? Because their lips are moving. It does pencil out. They're going to build. They'll still make their money. Not all lawyers. I'm a public interest attorney, and the reason I went to law school and the reason that I am a lawyer is so that I can stand up to these special interests. So there are two very different kinds of lawyers. There are corporate defense attorneys, and there are those that defend these special interests, and then there's lawyers like me who represent activists, individuals, low-income individuals, families, nonprofits. So that's what I do every day. I stand up to these special interests. I'm the only candidate who has any subject matter expertise in this area, in land use and in the core subject matters that the city council deals with. I'm the one that can stand up to developers and special interests. The current council member is, as I mentioned earlier, bought and paid for by the Building Industry Association. That's who's funding Councilmember Zapf's super PAC, and the by far largest contributor to her campaign committee itself is, in fact, developers. So when developers say that it doesn't pencil out, we can't build more than 50%, first of all, that's not true, but secondly, then don't build. We don't want you building luxury condos. We don't want you building more and more unaffordable units that are just going to take from our community and that are going to increase displacement and that are going to drive costs up for everybody and decrease affordability. We see people being priced out of the district, priced out of the city, having to move east, having to move to Portland, wherever. They can't afford to live in San Diego anymore. And we're seeing affordable units knocked down, or just units that have been there for a long time and people have lived there and paid a normal amount of rent, or it's affordable if somebody were to purchase the unit, but then you see a developer swoop in and build luxury condos. And any time that we allow that to happen and we're not taking something back from the developer, we're not requiring them to build affordable housing, we're requiring them to give something back to the community, we're giving something away of value. And what we're seeing happen at the Smart Growth and Land Use Committee right now, this is a proposal, you can watch the video of last Monday's Smart Growth and Land Use Committee hearing, where they forwarded on a proposal, and this is being fast-tracked by the mayor, to fast-track the building and incentivize building so-called middle-income units. And all this is doing is it's taking what was density bonus for affordable housing and giving this subsidy to developers so that they can build unaffordable units. And so it's giving the developers something, not getting anything back in return. The mayor is fast-tracking this, and the myth is that this is going to somehow bring costs down. It's not. It's going to bring costs up for everybody the more that we let developers get away with this.
All right, now we're going to open it up. Ryan Seacrest here is going to pass me the 3x5 cards.
So, tell them where the cards go.
These are your questions, and if I mess up your question, you can jump up and scream at me.
And we're going to do it random. We got about 10 questions.
And then we'll cut off a little early to let you guys make a statement.
And you're going to get 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes each on these. Okay, so how specifically will you address your fellow council members to restart the to retain the 30-foot height limit? Yeah, so that's one of the biggest questions we have. You know, we need you to represent us, not just us, but at the city council. So we're going to start with, I'm sorry, who are we starting with? Daniel.
2 minutes.
Well, it would be foolish and unwise to make any comment to promise anything without knowing the full picture at the time. For me to make a definitive answer now on the 30-foot height in Claremont,
Would you legislate for a 30-foot height with your council members, your associates on the council? Will you talk to them to support the 30-foot height? That's what the man's asking.
If-
Yes or no,
if-
that's all you have to say. Right.
if the will of the community is for the 30-foot height limitation, I will lobby for that 30-foot height limitation. But I would need to know definitively what area, what is the zoning, the tract, the parcel tract. I mean, there are different areas of the Marina corridor. Some of the areas may have to go to 45 feet. Look at, I told you, sir, I didn't come here I came here to tell the truth. If you don't like it, you have a choice. You can vote for anyone you wish.
Already.
But beware the camel's nose. Because once an individual gets elected, you've seen it happen before. They switch and bait. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't operate that way. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you exactly what you want to hear to get elected. Thank you.
The question is how will I lobby my other council members? I like to take things back to things that are familiar with people. I would have to find out from each and every, I would get a little background on each and every council member on perhaps their experiences in this department, ask them why they are voting this way, okay? I would also look at who supports them. That is the number one thing you have to do when you're talking about looking at the decisions your council members are making. You gotta follow the money trail, okay? And I hate to say this, I'd use some of that as leverage when I talk to them and we have to negotiate, because I do support the 30-foot height limit. So I would talk to them about why not, what is your experience in this? I would go that direction with it and figure out where we could come to a compromise as far as the 30-foot height limit. But I would definitely, I'd have to get information on my colleague and find out why they're voting the way they're voting. And I think that's the better way to go about it. Thank you.
I'm just curious, how many folks here got the mailer 5 or 6 times with Councilmember Zapf picking trash out of the river? Just curious, where was it just Ocean Beach they're sending that to? I don't know. So pretty, you guys are getting it too. That's funded by the super PAC that is funded by the Building Industry Association. So trying to portray Councilmember Zapf as an environmentalist, repeating this message, but it is in fact the Building Industry Association. So you know who Councilmember Zapf is accountable to. You've seen her votes, and you can look at her fundraising and see where it's coming from. It's coming from developers, and that's who's funding the super PAC as well. I do support the 30-foot height limit. District 2, we don't need to build up here. We see all these luxury high-rise condos going in downtown. We see massive apartment buildings and luxury developments. No affordable housing being required. So it's really the wrong conversation. Why are we trying to cram something down the throats of District 2 residents, here in the Marina View Corridor, something that's clearly just engineered for the Manchester Jerome's money machine to make money and impact our community and leave? Why do we need to have that development here, which by the way doesn't even provide any affordable housing, when meanwhile we've got developments that are going up downtown that no requirements are being imposed whatsoever on these developments to include affordable housing or to do anything to actually address the housing crisis. When we allow developers to just build, all that it does is raise costs for everyone. There's a myth that if we build more, that supply is going to then create, the supply is going to meet the demand. The supply is not going to meet the demand. It's just going to cause further displacement the more we let developers get away with, and we've seen it happen, and we need to hold the developers accountable. And so the way on the city council, as a District 2 representative, first of all, it's my district, I live here, council members tend to respect that. I'll also be part of a supermajority where the Democrats can actually stand up to the mayor, who is the one fast-tracking all of these developer proposals. And so the other Democratic council members certainly will want to respect that. I doubt that the Republicans will want to. They probably will want to force it on us because they're funded by developers and it's not their district. But that'll be up to them. But I'm confident that I can get our Democratic council members to support that.
How will I address my fellow council members on this issue? Bryan makes a good point that they usually listen to the representative from that district to get an understanding of what's going on in that district. Our district happens to have a lot of mixed use right now in terms of the housing zoning. We have a lot of 3-story buildings, here in Bay Park even. We have a lot of apartment houses, we have condos that are 3 stories, and we have them all over our district. We have a lot of infill in OB and PB, where people have given up their backyards and built little homes and apartments back there. So we've done a lot. We've done a lot. Every place in the city needs to do its part. And we need to make sure that the other council members understand that we want their districts to do their part. In the meantime, we don't want to ruin the coastline. We do not need to be Manhattan on the Atlantic Ocean. We don't need to be Manhattan on the Pacific Ocean. We need to be Bay Park, Bay Ho, Pacific Beach, and all of the beach areas. We need to stay beautiful. And we need to stay with a great quality of life. So I think, yes, we need to insist that when they build, they include housing for all income levels. And we can mandate that. We can make it a law. We can do that. But we can also ask our fellow council members, by being a team player, getting along with them, and knowing them well, to help us out. And then we'll help them in their districts when the time comes when they need help. So you have to be collegial. You have to get along with other people very well. I've been doing this all my life. You can imagine what I went through as a woman all those years ago, trying to become a doctor. So it works. Just gotta be graceful and kind, and other people will respond. So I think there's ways we can work all this out. Thank you.
Oh, here's a nice long one. So if you plan on supporting new units for housing, homeless, low income, do you plan on adding a new, that last word is hard. Anybody recognize the question?
Sorry, it was me. Adding new units? Adding new...
Yeah, if you do plan on adding new units, do you, a new tax. I think that's what you were asking.
Yes.
Okay. Do you plan on adding a new tax? If so, how do you plan to choose the candidates for the new units? Background checks, San Diego residency prioritization. Was that simple enough? So if you're going to support new units, she wants to know, is there going to be a new tax? And then how are the candidates going to be, the residents, how are they going to be picked for the new units?
If I'm not quite understanding the question, but if I'm understanding the question, you're saying that if you're building affordable housing, is that what it is? How are you going to pick the residents that you're going to allow the affordable housing at? That's a good question. I am a Section 8 landlord, okay, with rent control, okay? So I'm very familiar with the process. Mostly Section 8 people, the people that are on Section 8, they go to the Housing Authority and they qualify for a certificate. So the affordable housing works similar to that aspect. Really no tax involved if you're talking about, you know, that type of situation. So then what happens, the applicants seek the units that are available, and then you get to choose, depending on if you want to run credit checks or whatever the situation is, to have those people. If you may prefer someone that is going to be with the affordable housing certificates with a job, which I like, because they can pay their, well, you know you're going to be guaranteed your small amount of money, basically, that you get from the actual tenant. Sometimes I'll take people that don't have jobs, but I'll also have them guarantee it with a family member who does have a job. I hate to miss rent, because then I can't sit around. But that's just a little joke. So that's a criteria that I would use and talk to my other council members about. Oh, and to add, I still have a little bit of time. I want to just kind of backtrack a little bit. All the high-rises you see downtown, they're half empty. Brand new buildings. It's all half empty. So developers keep building because they get paid. Okay? But most people can't afford to live down there. A 500 square foot unit rents for about $2,000 a month minimum. So you have all those buildings and half of them are empty, and they've been up there for years. Thank you.
Guess I'll go next. So, yeah, I didn't quite understand the question either. The question is, how does the process work for getting into affordable housing? There's a system for that that's in place, and you know, there's a lottery system if there are more folks applying for it. But it's based on income level. That's the only criterion. And it's, if you're low income as defined by the Health and Safety Code, then you're qualified to rent in one of these units or own if it's set up that way. So with the Section 8 issue with the housing voucher assistance, that's another aspect of the housing affordability and homelessness crisis in San Diego, where we have a San Diego Housing Commission that is completely intransigent. They're out of touch. They're not updating their systems, and they're far out of date with the housing voucher levels. So you've got folks that qualify for housing voucher assistance. And you know, there are people that work full-time jobs and they need to be able to, it would be nice to be able to live and work in the same city. And you know, San Diego is becoming more and more unaffordable. Housing voucher assistance exists so that people can actually afford to use that voucher. It's useless to you if the prices of rent are astronomically higher than the voucher that you have. So San Diego Housing Commission needs to update its voucher levels, because it's, in some zip codes, it's been, they're years out of date. They're using 2015 standards. So and there would actually be 10,000 new units that could be opened up to housing voucher holders, and this would also help landlords receive a constant source of income from being able to rent out these units, and folks would actually be able to live using their housing voucher. So I'm going to end it there because I think I've covered. Yeah, we're running out of time here. So where are we going on here? Attorney General says it goes this way.
Okay, I'm not quite clear what your question was, questioner. Were you, I thought I heard the word homeless in there?
Yeah, like homeless, like for example, like there's new units being built for the homeless to help them off the streets.
All right.
How do we know that they're not going to be like associated with either gangs, or if they're like drug users, or I think I'm concerned with just what's going to be if you bring these housing units, like with the people that come into our community.
Yeah, I understand your fear. So you're not really, affordable housing is a different matter. Although some of the people who are homeless can come in, get checked out by the social worker, and see if they can meet the criteria for the supplemental housing vouchers, etc. And many of the homeless actually have some sort of a stipend each month. Veterans get $1,000. Some people are on Social Security disability. And in the plan where we have Housing First with wraparound services, which is the proposal by the Regional Task Force for the Homeless, that's what we do. So the way it's been done in other cities is they list the homeless according to who's in the greatest need in terms of, are they going to die on the street? So that's how they make their list of who they're going to house first. I think here we need to look at it maybe from a little bit different point of view. It's another one of those things where we need community input. Here in Claremont, we're a family place. And here in District 2, we're a family place. And we need to look at the criteria. Can we help the homeless families? They would fit in quite well in Claremont. And I think everybody in Claremont has an open heart and feels a moral need to help our brothers and sisters that need housing. So I have a 5-step plan of how to deal with this, which I don't have time to go into right now, but who knows what the next question will be. Okay.
Okay.
The way I understood the question regarding there was a tax angle to the question. About a month or two ago, there was a $900 million bond measure that passed through the Rules Committee, which is going to the full council. Part of the package is for the homeless, to fund the homeless through the Housing Commission, tied into the convention center. Pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to cost each and every one of you, if you have Prop 13, anywhere from $50 to $120 or more a year on your property tax, maybe even more. I can tell you I'm the only Democrat, the only one. I oppose this. I'm in opposition. Okay? The people that live in my neighborhood, that are on fixed income and lower income, they can't afford it. So what do? It's like a lifeguard trying to save a drowning person. They jump on your head and pull you down. Same thing is what they're doing. I'm not going to touch Proposition 13, and that's where I break with the Democratic Party, and that's why, ladies and gentlemen, keep your eye on the ball. Okay? Thank you.
So, speaking of the Democratic Party, this question is, originally it was for Jen and Bryan, but you can all answer it if you'd like. How do you propose stopping the Sacramento Democrats from continuing their efforts to raise density at transit stops in San Diego? Well, it was for Dr. Jen and for Bryan Pease, but
First of all, the Democrats are not against Prop 13.
I know.
Especially not this Democrat. Next of all, how do we stop Sacramento from doing that? That bill is dead. It did not pass. The bill is dead. It is ridiculous for them to tell us how to do our local zoning. And they realize that, and they killed it. So it's gone. Don't worry about it.
Only temporarily.
The price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
Well, it's not dead for the middle income bill, and that's the one that's being pushed by Assemblymember Gloria, and it's what I talked about earlier, how developers are constantly trying to take density bonus and extract value from our community, get their subsidies for building what they always want to build anyway, which is luxury condos. So the Gloria bill is bad, and that needs to be killed, and that is going to impose requirements on us here locally, and is going to force us to if this bill passes, it's gonna force us to have to give up some of these things to developers and not get anything back in return, because it's gonna be for building the types of units that developers are just gonna build anyway, and that they're gonna continue to reap their profits. So I will stand up against that and make sure that we can enforce our local zoning ordinances.
Daniel, you want to answer that as well? Go ahead.
Regarding the Democratic upper lower chamber in Sacramento, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like establishment candidate, politically correct candidate, vote for somebody else, but don't vote for me. Okay, thank you.
I got no comment.
Okay, so this is a really good question. One of the things I've been doing since 2014 is preaching public participation. And Raise the Balloon was organized to get just that, not to tell people how to think, how to vote, but to be there during the process. So here's the question, and this one's for all of you. What would you do to make the planning department responsive to the community instead of just going through the motions of public participation? Great question.
Okay, number one, I found out a long time ago that most projects are finished or complete. I didn't mean the actual structures aren't completed, but most of them are signed off before you even know about it. Okay, and they're already done. Okay, so we have to figure out a way, and I'll tell you this, and your council people know about it. Okay, and they act like when it finally gets to you, if you don't protest it until it's already done, then they act like they never heard about it. And this is the first time they're hearing about it. They've heard about it long in advance. And I'll give you an example. I live in Point Loma. When they decided they were going to start changing the airplane patterns, okay, they said, well, what they have, 3,000 people at the meetings? And they're saying, well, you guys have already done it. No, we haven't done it. We haven't done it. It was done. Never in 8 years did I ever have a plane fly over my house. They started flying over my house long before it hit the media, and we had the meetings and things like that. So these things are done. So we have to know about these things at the beginning. And you need a responsible council member that when they start talking about these things, they need to put it out to you so you can have a voice before these things are done. Because by the time they get to you, they are done. Trust me. Thank you.
So, the planning department, first of all, exists to serve developers. We have it's called developer services. We don't have constituent services, we have developer services. And they have city staff there that are accountable only to the mayor under the strong mayor form of government. And they exist to serve developers. Now, when city staff signs off on a project, that can be appealed by either a concerned citizen or a planning group or a town council can appeal such a decision, and then it goes up to the planning commission. The planning commission often does the wrong thing, and a lot of times the community isn't even aware of what the planning commission is up to, but they're constantly not following the law. I've actually won cases against the planning commission. I'm the only candidate, obviously, including the current council member, since I'm the only attorney, who's actually litigated against the planning department and won for the public interest. So I know how the system works, how the planning system works in the city, and I know how to navigate it, and I know what the correct standard is, what the findings are that need to be made for projects to be approved, and I'm the one that can be your most effective advocate on the city council, because I can get answers, I can ask the right questions, and yeah, the planning department is they answer to the mayor. So as a council member, I can't call the planning department and say, you must do this. I'm just a lowly council member, but I can ask the right questions and I can get results. And when I'm fed something by the mayor's office or by staff or by the planning department that's not correct, and they're constantly using misinformation and running circles around the council members, I know exactly when they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes, and I know how to stand up. And I know how, when litigation is called for, when that can be used as a tool as well. And I have a great relationship with the city attorney's office, and I can call up Mara Elliott and I can say they're screwing this up, and we need to stand up and do something about this.
What to do to make the planning commission more responsive to the planning groups? Good question. Strong mayor system, just as he explained, planning commission is chosen by the mayor, appointed by the mayor, and then approved by the city council members. So if we have that 6th Democratic vote on the council and the Democrats stick together for once, maybe we could get some other people on the planning commission who will listen to the people who actually live where what they're planning about is. So that's, otherwise, 2 years from now, we're gonna have a mayor election. So we have to stay participating, and we have to figure out who is the best one to be the mayor, who's gonna be for the people instead of for the powers that be. So, you know, we need to have a nice mix. We need to be able to go forward. We need to build for the future, plan for the future. But on the other hand, we have to take into account what the citizens want in their own planning groups. Now, if any of you are on the planning groups, God bless you, and keep it up. And let's find some other people to be on the planning groups. I know we always have trouble filling our vacancies in Claremont. And we need people who know about urban life, urban planning, or who are willing to study it and learn it. So please participate in the community. I think it's wonderful that you came tonight, and I thank you.
I've been on the planning group since 1991, off and on. And it's my belief that we need moderation in the city. We need collaboration. This idea of a supermajority is not going to work, folks, because we are one people. Each and every one of you has a different point of view. It's far better to offer moderation than swing one way left or one way right. It's far better to collaborate, right, left, work together. I hear, what's that noise? Anyway, getting back to my planning group, I vote on the planning group. I've read the grand jury report that they investigated our planning group. And what you ought to know, there's a nonprofit called Circulate San Diego. They have a demographic agenda. I mean, that's true. You can look it up. They have an agenda. It's demographically based. They want to get you and change your behavior to take public transit, to walk. Now, I agree with that, but the way they're going about it is not good. It's not good. Not good at all. They're trying to really shove this right down your throat, and I'm really upset about it. Because we need to work together and get ideas that are diverse, different ideas, not just one point of view. Thank you.
All right, so I think we have enough time for one last question, and then we'll have you give us your candidate statements, summarize why we should vote for you. So, this question is really a good one. Thank you for this one. Would you waive your right to change position on issues you ran on, as did Faulkner and Jerry Sanders?
I'm always open to new positions, and if new facts present themselves, then I'm going to change my position based on those facts. But what I'm not going to change my position on is based on who's funding my campaign. And for a lot of this stuff, you can follow the money, and you can look at who is funding our current council member. It's developers, lobbyists, special interests. They're never going to support me. They know I don't support them. I go up against them. And it's true that they also try to get to the Democrats too. The reason there is this partisan divide is because the Republican Party has been completely taken over by money. And then on the Democratic side, there's still some hope. So that's why I'm a Democrat. But I'm going to stand up to these special interests and to these lobbyists. So sure, if there's something, if there's new factual information and there's a valid reason that can be articulated for why a position should be changed on a certain issue, then I'd be happy to look at that new information. But I'm not going to be bought off. There's nobody that's going to be able to influence me from some lobbyist or some outside influencer, because the whole reason that I'm running for city council is to continue fighting for the public interest. I'm perfectly happy what I'm doing right now. I love being a litigator. I love taking on these special interests, but it's one case at a time. And I see things that the city is constantly screwing up, and I see that the city council is not being given proper information. And you see if you just watch the discussion of the city council meetings and the committee hearings, it's run by the lobbyists and the developers, and they come down there and they have their talking points and they're all in lockstep and it all sounds so great. But if you know that everything that they're saying is BS, and you know exactly how to call them out and what the right questions are to ask and hold them accountable, then we can actually get some things done. We can actually change some policy. We can move forward for the public interest. And so that's what you need to look at, is what is my motivation? Who am I actually going to be representing? And it's always going to be the community and the public interest, and not the special interests and the lobbyists and the developers.
Well, he said everything I was going to say. So this is the first time actually Bryan and I are on the same page at the same time. I'm right along with him. It's all about you. You're the community. You're the ones who dictate what I take down to City Hall to represent. I'm not going to let those other special interests, even when they were even when they were supporting me. Like I said before, I didn't always do what they wanted me to do if I didn't feel it was right. I am open to new positions if the evidence is presented and it goes that way. And I can also vouch for my friend Bryan here, because when I was suing my homeowner association downtown, he wouldn't take my case because he doesn't believe in representing people that can pay him. So so he wouldn't take it, and because I'm hell on wheels, I was fighting. But now you could have been $50,000. You could have been $50,000 richer though. You know? But anyway. I came out on top on that one, trust me. I went up against my homeowners association. That wasn't popular. 400 units in my condo complex. I went after them. And so that's what I'll do. I don't have a problem with things like that. And I will be your voice, and you're the ones that I'm representing, not those other people. Thank you.
That was pretty good. My votes on the Claremont Planning Group have always been without prejudice. I've always looked at the big picture. I've never looked at individuals. I've looked at what is good for the broad scope of the community, everyone, the biggest whole. I've always looked at these things. And I repeat, I've always voted without prejudice. Whether it be a religious organization going into the community, whether it be a height limitation, whether it be a car wash, whatever it is. Okay? I look what is good And ladies and gentlemen, I hate to use the word humanity because it sounds kind of maybe a little bit pompous or highbrow of me, but my background is in the humanities, and I look at the human condition. I look at humanity when I vote. I look at the people that are suffering, people that need help. This is how I vote. What I believe in my heart and how I can help people, genuinely help them. Because God knows there's so many of our residents that are hurting badly. That's why I'm up here right now, really. That's it. There's nothing more than that. I don't need the money. I'm doing this because I'm compelled to help people. It's not a job. It's not a job at all for me. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if that, anyway, I would not waive my right to change my mind if new evidence is presented that is factual and leads me to think a different way. However, I would always consult with you guys. I would never be without transparency. I am very upset with how the city has handled our neighborhoods in this district for the last 8 years. I'm a Donna Fry kind of person. I believe in openness, honesty, ethics, and that's what you'll get if you vote for me. So I thank you very much.